penalty if they do say something?
Shame,
Sad,
embarrassment,
yeah.
depression.
No money? They don't have the money?
We don't do that.
They have to weather the ire of fans.
I think, look, at the end of the day, all this is about is like preserving the integrity of the movie-going experience for people who've been on this ride for 11 years of their life. I mean, can you imagine if you really cared about this and somebody ruined it for you before you even got in the theater? It'd be devastating to you. So why do that?
How do you guys keep this story straight? Like, how do you know you're doing this 5 years ago and it's going to affect something 5 years from now? And is it a flow chart? Do you have a room with string attached?
It's movie to movie, frankly.
Yeah. And it's a lot of possibilities. Like, you never really know what the future holds. Like, it's like, you don't cross that bridge till you come to it. Mm-hmm. So we may make choices on Winter Soldier that could have implications down the road, but we don't necessarily know exactly what we're going to do with those until we get there. You know what I mean? So
we had inklings of an idea that, like, we knew it would be combustible in Winter Soldier if we put a photograph of Bucky when Zola's sort of at the computer talking about Hydra's history, and we put a photograph of Bucky very close to the photograph of the death of Howard Stark. And then when we sat down to do Civil War, and we're talking about, well, so how do we instigate a Civil War divorce, a Kramer versus Kramer, amongst these characters? Well, we have this, and Bucky killed Tony's father. That you can't find anything sort of more Shakespearean than that. Right. Is that Steve's been hiding the secret from him. So that's really how these movies evolve. It's an examination of the prior film.
Is there ever a moment where you're working on one and you're like, oh, we did that in the last one, we've got to address that, where it's just going to be hanging there?
Yeah, you do. There's a lot of and there's a lot of brains on these. I mean, we work in conjunction with Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, who've done all 4 movies with them. They're the writers.
Yeah, I actually just moderated a panel with them.
Yeah, they're great.
They're awesome.
They're the best writers in the business. And they, this is like, 4 brains that are constantly on the material, asking questions. I'll just, sometimes when I'm on a plane, I'll just put on an older Marvel film just to remember some of the mythology, to refresh my brain as we're working on the next movie. Oh yeah, I forgot we did this, or we said that, or there's a nuance there that we can play off of, and then we all do that. Feige is, of course, like an encyclopedia of information about the Marvel Universe, and he has a whole team the sort of like the heads of state that at Marvel that work with him.
Why do you think these movies resonate so much with people?
They're sort of essential mythology, and these are archetypal characters, and I think that because the mythology is so dense that everyone can find a character that they can relate to in some way. I also think they're very flawed, and that essentially that beyond like the spectacle and the costumes, there's a psychological realism, at least in the movies that we've made there. That's been, I think, a constant for us, is trying to imbue it with some sort of emotional truth or psychological realism in the way that people behave. So they feel very human to you and accessible, even though they can ascend beyond that.
How do you guys decide who gets disintegrated?
Well, that's all a function of story, honestly. Yeah. I mean, it's the same way we decide everything else in the narrative. It's running through the character arcs that we're following. The meter we always use is ourselves. It's like, how do we surprise ourselves? How do we thrill ourselves? How do we go somewhere we weren't thinking about? How do we land somewhere that we feel like is challenging or problematic or on some level? Because that's when we know we're in the sort of like risable areas of narrative. The combustible areas. So
what's something that you really wanted in one of your movies and it just didn't work? And you really wanted it to happen?
I'm trying to think of like...
I know we've made a lot of choices and then moved off those choices. I mean, it's an iterative process developing the scripts. So there are characters who in movies and then completely disappear from movies. I think, Civil War was a series of things that happened that we really wanted to happen, but maybe almost didn't happen, meaning we had to convince Robert Downey, who was not under contract to do Civil War, to do that movie and to essentially play a bad guy.
So how do you convince him?
We drive out to his house.
A lot of meetings in Malibu.
You go out to his house and you sit, and he's incredibly thoughtful, and he's a true artist and one of the great actors of his generation. And you have a creative conversation with him about it and just say, look, we're going to try and do something really risky here. We want to deconstruct. We want to really inject some edge and some tension into these stories, and he has to keep telling these stories. Right. So he wants to play something compelling, and so when you say to him, "Hey, you get to be a villain, and it's going to make your next few movies a lot more interesting and give you more to play," then it's not that hard to sell.
So how many movies are you guys signed to do?
Well, we've only taken it one at a time,
Really?
honestly, yeah. Except for Infinity War and Endgame, that was a duo.
Yeah.
But we don't have any plans to do any more movies with Marvel. Now we love Marvel. We couldn't love them more. And our working experience on these films has been among the greatest in our careers. So I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere down the line we end up doing something when we find the right story. But right now, this is it. And part of the big creative upside of that for us was we got to do the conclusion of this first 22 movie run of the MCU without thinking about the future. And that was the first time I think Joe and I really weren't thinking about where does the story go after this. We were just focused on the road that these movies have traveled and how do we bring the most epic conclusion to that road.
If the Disney-Fox merger means that X-Men come over, Deadpool comes over, would you want those folks in the Avengers movies?
I think everyone has a PhD in content, right? Like we consume staggering amounts of content. A 10-year-old can watch 5 minutes of a movie and tell you how it's going to end. It's just intuitive. And so I think, we can handle, and by we, I mean the audience can handle volumes of information thrown at them. And in fact, they like the density. Or there's a certain segment of the audience that clearly likes the density. Game of Thrones, the Marvel Universe, So I think adding more characters creates more complications, more archetypes, more potential for identification. I do think that it's a very clear mandate of Marvel's moving forward that for diversity. These are movies that reach global audiences, and everyone has the right to see themselves on screen. And I think that the more characters that there are, the more diverse the characters are, that the more global and communal the movies become.
Tori Alonso told me at the Captain Marvel premiere that the world is ready for an LGBTQ superhero. I know you guys have spoken a little bit about that. I think it's time.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
It's way past time.
I don't know if they've officially announced what it is yet, but we're going to let them do that. But it's going to come very quickly.
How do you think the world will react?
I mean, I think that the world will react the way that they've reacted to all diversification in movies. Is that people who love these movies are going to be excited as hell, and I think we're as excited as hell. And again, like I said, everyone has the right to see themselves in these stories.
And should there be an intermission during Endgame?
We didn't design it for one, and there's really no good spot. So we've been telling people to
it's like surgery prep, right? Just don't drink or eat after midnight and you're going to be great.
When did you know that the movie was going to run? What is it, 3 hours? How many?
It was 3 hours.
3 hours. I mean, right from the script phase, we knew it. It was, bringing closure to this story is a very difficult thing to do on a narrative level, and it required that kind of space. The movie, you feel it. Nobody who's seen the movie so far says anything about length.
Does anyone at Disney or Marvel say, hey, guys?
No. They watch it. They literally watch it. They go, yeah, that's what it should be.
Wow.
They've been exceedingly supportive of it. And it's how do you wrap up 22 movies in anything less than that? And we're committed to emotional stakes, and that takes story time and real estate, screen real estate. And, all you're going to end up doing is cutting emotional moments down, and nobody wants to see that.
What is the future of filmmaking when you see, companies like, Katzenberg putting together a company where it's content in 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Do you see yourselves doing stuff like that? Smaller Netflix projects?
We love every kind of, outlet for storytelling. I mean, it's. I've got 4 kids, and I'm just watching the way that they consume content. It's exceedingly different than the way that we do, but I'm excited by that. I think that, the impressionists have to step aside at some point and let the next generation of painters come in and paint the way that they want to paint. So let's let the next generation of storytellers come in and tell the story the way that they want to tell the story.
We love things that force you to work in new ways because we think that the structural changes you have to make to do that can lead to creative originality, and pushing into areas that you never have before. It's like Joe, our whole career we've structured like that. We started as really micro-budgeted indie filmmakers. We segued into television. We did comedy, drama. We do big movies. We shoot commercials. We love everything you can do with cinema, and the fact that what you can do with cinema just continues to become more and more diverse is amazing for us.
And I think amazing for filmmakers and for people who love stories.
I have to ask you about Tom Holland playing a veteran and an opioid addict.
Yeah.
How's he prepping for that?
It's intense prep. I mean, it's certainly like this is a big shift for all of us as doing a treatise on the opioid epidemic, and we've lost people very close to us to the epidemic, and so this is a very personal and passionate project for us. You know, the book is sort of loosely based on a true story, and you know, I think a very challenging role for him, and he's really working hard preparing for it. I think both mentally and physically.
I find these movies, they make it way too pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like there's nothing pretty about it, and the actors, the team, they have to go that extra length, I think, to make it as realistic as possible.
Well, yeah, you know, if you've read the book Cherry by Nico Walker, I mean, I think it speaks to exactly what you're talking about. It's
unflinching.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, it's a difficult read.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
Great.
you.
I cannot wait to see it.